So I thought I'd tell you about the first experience I had when I went to the castle to be made into a prophet. I don't know if I told you about this, so I'll just go ahead and share it with you so I can just get practice. So it was on February the 14th, 2016. It was in the evening. My parents were at the beach in Florida, so there was no one in the house but me. And I was with my spirit guides. Now, I had already been possessed at this point for, I believe, 2.5 months, and I tried many ways to get it to leave. I came close a few times, but unfortunately, when it comes to a succubus, if you do something sexual with yourself, it will reset the clock and you got to do another 3 days of no sexual contact. So, what happened was I had just basically given up. And I remember going into a room with that my high priestess guide was in, and I sat down and spoke to her, and I said, "You know what? I think this is it. I don't think I'm going to make it." And I said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just document all I can about this demon, document all I can about spirit guides, all I've learned as for being a psychic, the exercises and everything I've learned, and pass it on to someone who I can trust and say, this is all legitimate knowledge. You can use it. You can tell other people that they can use it. It's a good idea. And then no one can say that I didn't live a productive life as best I could. So I remember my Templar guide using the Ouija board. He asked Bridget, who I was worshiping at the time, of course, ask, what do you care about most in life? And I said, well, what I care about most in life and what is most important to me has been my religion. I mean, even when I was a Christian, that seemed to be the only thing that went right for me because I did it right. It was a way of life. It was something I enjoyed doing very much. And it's always been a great place to go back to no matter what might be happening in life. It just seems so appropriate and so comforting. And I never had anything that I was more passionate about, even as a Christian, than practicing my religion and practicing it right. And me being a psychic, it only made me even more deeply religious, believe it or not, because I felt that being a mystic and being into religion, these two, they're not strange bedfellows. I mean, if you're going to believe in the supernatural or the metaphysical, then obviously you have to believe that, even as a skeptic, there probably is a higher power out there or divine power, but I'm getting off the subject. But anyways, the Templar said that Bridget heard me. And he then asked another question. Bridget asks, what do you want to happen first? Do you want her to bring a woman into your life, or do you want to be a prophet? Now, I thought this was a trick question. And I thought, okay, she was thinking, what does he really want? Does he really want to take this to the next level, which is what he has earned? Or is he just going to ask me for something because that's what he wants just as much, which was a relationship? I was very lonely at the time. So I answered what I thought was the correct answer because I thought this was a test. And I said, I would rather be your prophet and let you decide when I can have a woman in my life. And the Templar said, she heard you. And then he said, she wants to meet you. And so I'm confused for just a moment. I don't really know what this means. So I stood up, and then I remember a hand, one of my spirit guides' hand, turning me around. And I look outside. It's night outside. And the lights at the houses that were all lit up, they were turning green. And so they hurried me into my bedroom. They shut the door. They told me to derobe. And then I hear this humming noise in my room. I don't know where it was coming from. I've never had this noise before. And I'm sitting in the chair and I'm hearing this humming noise. And then they tell me to look out the window to the left. I look outside, and I had to get up obviously to go look outside. And there is a Craig myrtle bush out there, and there were flowers literally blooming on it. And these white Craig myrtle flowers, they were literally blooming before my eyes. And there were raindrops falling down onto the leaves and whatnot. It was a clear day outside, or at night, clear night. There was no rain. So where was this coming from? And then my high priestess spirit guide said the plant life outside was mutating. Okay, this is to plant life that could be found in a rainforest, because that's what the third dimension was. It is a rainforest. And so I'm sitting in there for, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 more minutes. And then I hear all around me this thunder, this thundering noise, like thunder. But it wasn't like thunder from a thunderstorm, though it sounded like thunder. And I was told that all the other gods and goddesses were calling on the others to come and look, because someone was coming in who was going to be made a prophet. This is a big deal from them, from what I'm told. And so I am scared out of my mind. But I keep hearing it. I keep hearing the thunder and everything. And so, but I'm just sitting in that chair and just really, really afraid as to what would happen next. And so then I hear this almost like this bell ring 3 times. And then my spirit guide, my high priestess guide says, okay, my friend, I want you to go into the bathroom and I want you to face the door. Okay. And so I go into the bathroom and I face the door, and in my peripheral vision was the mirror. And then I see this woman, this young adult woman who was Bridget, obviously, peer behind me. I was under the belief that if I were to turn and look upon her face, it would kill me. So obviously I kept looking at the door, but obviously I realized it was safe to look at her reflection in the mirror. Now I had a Celtic ring on, and I remember her lifting up my hand to take a look at the ring, which she did not like for some reason. But after that, she then took me back into my bedroom, which was right next to the bathroom, connected to the bedroom. And she started to communicate with me on the Ouija board. And she says, okay, I've looked at your Akashic chakra. You've done no evil in your past lives. And then a couple more moments passed by. She spoke to me again using the board. She says, you also have a good soul. And then I said to her, well, I'm glad, because if I tried to be evil, I'd do a bad job of it. And she did not find that funny. And then she says, well, you are my prophet. And then the moment she said that, I started convulsing. And I had no idea, but for a moment I was convulsing like I was having a seizure. And then after this convulsion had stopped, she says, you are now immortal. And you also have some supernatural abilities, which we will work on at a later date. And she says, I want you to come here every night, and we will talk and we will work. And I believe that was all she had to say to me. Now, after that, she told me to go to bed. But I did notice that she was with me for the whole night. She was even with me in the bed. We did not do anything, but we did do time together that night. And so I remember getting up in the morning. I was still in the castle, but I believe it was time for me it was a work day, I'm not sure. But then she started feeling me out and said that I had a really nice body. And that really made me uncomfortable, I gotta say. But that was the first experience that I had. That was the initial experience. And it was always very scary going back up to that castle and hearing that thunder, because you're around divine beings that could basically do anything to you. They could, do all kinds of things I can't even begin to imagine. But I'll share this with you. They now told me why they didn't want me going into the castle like they've allowed other prophets, and that was because I wasn't ready to see how divine beings behave. You know, walking into a castle, you're going to have everyone admiring you. You know, the females are going to admire you. They're probably going to be looking at you with desire. They're going to even try to seduce you. Obviously, one of the goddesses tried to do that when I moved out into my first apartment. And they said it was just too much for you to take. In fact, that's why most of the time they don't have, your regular lay faithful go to the castle, even if they've earned it, unless a very special reason has been determined. And it's because seeing divine beings in their in their environment is very disturbing. And it could even damage your faith, especially if you've been brought up to believe that they don't behave the way human beings do. Especially because divine beings are sexual, very sexual. And the females, especially the young ones who are very curious, they might try and seduce you. And if you're not ready for that, then that could disturb you. That can kind of make you question your faith. And that's normal. Eventually you will recover, as I have. But that's the reason why. And so that was my first experience. And it is one I will always hold dear to me, because that was the beginning of a new life. I mean, I was literally a different man that day. In fact, they have repeatedly told me that I was no longer a human being, even though I look like one. So I thought I'd share that with you. So let me know your thoughts on that and how I did with this video. Thanks.